Are you thinking about moving to the beautiful Seaport District of Boston? It is a rapidly developing area known for its modern architecture, waterfront views, and its lively retail and restaurant scene. In this video, I'll be talking everything Seaport District. It's one of the hotspots of Boston, and in this video, I'll also be comparing and contrasting it to a couple other hotspot neighborhoods in Boston. I hope you enjoy. Hi, I'm Katie Norton, a realtor in Massachusetts, and this channel is all about helping you know what it's like living in the Boston area. Subscribe if you haven't, and if you're thinking about moving to Boston, please reach out. So, what is the Seaport District? So it's very interesting because about 20 years ago, much of what we know as the Seaport District wasn't even there at all. So if you're a Boston native, then you know that the Seaport District actually developed from the larger South Boston neighborhood. I actually did a video about South Boston, so check that one out. But realistically, after the big dig was completed in Boston, Mayor Menino at the time decided to sort of take this little area of South Boston on the waterfront and turn it into sort of an innovation area. That led to high-rise hotels, high-rise condominiums, and plenty of restaurant and retail things. He also established the Boston Convention Center. There's a lot more information on that, but you should know that that's sort of how it all began. If you've never seen the before and after of Dubai, here's what it looks like. In the before picture, which was about 20 years ago, it's basically a barren desert. And now it's Dubai as we know it, one of the most beautiful, luxurious cities in the world. So imagine that is exactly what we did with that small part of South Boston. It was pretty barren, and then it's turned into the Seaport District of Boston now. As you can see in this before and after photo, it is now filled with luxurious high-rises all throughout. And like I mentioned with the big dig earlier, so this development took an underutilized industrial area, and it was basically just a docking area for where ships would come and go. They would, bring barges filled with stuff and empty them out there. There were a few restaurants in the area. I remember back in the 80s, it was one of those places where you might go into Boston and go to like an Anthony's Pier 4 for a very special occasion. But really, that was it. That was all that was there. And after the big dig, it basically allowed access into this seaport area much more conveniently than it had been before. But as you can see in these pictures, and as you could see in the pictures of Dubai, this place was basically invented out of thin air. So in this part of the video, I'll just fill you in a little bit on what is there in the Seaport District. I've talked a lot about the restaurants and retail that the Seaport has. I personally love going into the Seaport for some of the restaurants. They've got, when you think about like the larger chain restaurants across the country, a little bit more high end, like an Ocean Prime, like a Legal Seafoods, like a Mastro's. We just went to a beautiful one called Savor. They're more Boston restaurant groups. So Mr. H is a brand new one. I could just go on and on. There are literally hundreds of restaurants within the Seaport. Some of them are going to be high end, really fancy, really beautifully to sit down, Adavios, Del Frisco's, stuff like that, right on the waterfront. And then there's going to be a few others that are a little bit closer, further from the waterfront. Just to hit quickly on the retail area, there's been so many little different areas that have popped up across the Seaport. So it's not just one street, it's sort of like almost neighborhoody. So you might get a grouping of retail and restaurants. Over to the north, you're going to get a little one closer to the waterfront. And just every winter, they do this thing called the Snowport, where they do a lot of pop-up different retail options. And this is really fun because it has such a great Christmas and holiday vibe. And so it's definitely a destination to go to. So that's what happens in the winter. But really, the Seaport is just such an attraction in the summertime. There's a couple different breweries. It started with the Harpoon Brewery about 20 years ago, and that was definitely a destination place. Since that, we've got a couple other ones. We've got Cisco Brewery, Trillium, and a few others that have sort of popped up. But these make the Seaport definitely a destination place for young professionals to come into the city and hang out with their friends. In the summertime, there's also some pop-up retail stores. And what you'll find is maybe a store that is successful in the suburbs on the South Shore, they will bring their goods in for the summertime pop-up. That way it exposes them to the city and the shoppers in the city. Like many of the other retail hotspots around Boston, this makes the Seaport such a desirable place to live. Obviously, it's not for everyone, but when it comes to city living, the Seaport District of Boston has a unique experiential living. Imagine walking downstairs from your high-rise luxury condo and having everything you can imagine between retail, restaurants, services, and all those other things within less than a 5-minute walk from your condo. In my opinion, this makes the Seaport District of Boston a really special place to live, and I find that a lot of young professionals will end up moving into the Seaport because they have maybe access to their job, access to their friends, and access to all that the Seaport lifestyle brings. With that being said, let's compare and contrast the Seaport District with the rest of the larger South Boston neighborhood. The first big difference is that the Seaport District of Boston, just because it's brand new, it's a little more swanky, it's a little more flashy, it's very modern, it's very clean. It's just this wonderful place to live. Versus South Boston, which because it is a little bit older of a neighborhood and more established, it's already got its charm and uniqueness that is more in tune with a traditional Boston neighborhood. As I mentioned earlier, the Seaport District just naturally lends itself to young professionals, whereas the South Boston neighborhood, the larger neighborhood is going to lend itself to a variety of different genres of people. You're going to have your just out of college kids who are renting their houses. It's a more approachable and more family friendly place. So you might find yourself living next to a brand new family or a family that's lived there for 4 generations. As far as real estate goes, your Seaport District neighborhood is going to have the more modern, luxurious, high-rise condos with amenities galore. Whereas your South Boston neighborhoods are going to have more traditional single-family homes, triple-decker as they're called, but very rarely are you going to find something over 6 floors. That would be sort of the maximum in the South Boston neighborhoods. So when you're comparing and contrasting the retail and restaurants of the Seaport District versus South Boston neighborhood, as I mentioned, is going to have that more luxurious, brand new chain luxury branded retail and restaurants. Whereas South Boston is going to lend itself more to the mom and pop stores and the smaller boutique stores and the restaurants that are just a one-off. It's a restaurant that a chef maybe from the neighborhood has started. I will say the South Boston restaurant scene has exploded over the past 20 years. But again, it's just a very different experience than the one you're going to get in the Seaport District. So let's also compare the Seaport District to the neighborhood of Beacon Hill in Boston, which you may have heard of. So if you haven't heard of Beacon Hill, just think of your old city, like old Boston, like 1775 Boston. There's such beautiful architecture and character. And most of the Beacon Hill neighborhood is made up of single family homes. Some of them are going to be on the larger side, maybe updated, and they're beautiful, but they definitely still have that traditional Boston look to it. And that's what draws people to Beacon Hill. You've got your cobblestone streets and you've got your steep hills that lead you right up to the State House. The most appealing part of Beacon Hill, in my opinion, is Charles Street. It's at the bottom of the hill, and this houses all of the retail and restaurants that are in Beacon Hill. So on the hill are going to be all the residential homes, and then at the bottom of the hill, we call it the flats, you're going to have a couple small hotels, tons of beautiful boutique retail stores, and some really, really unique restaurants for Boston. And again, none of this is chain restaurants as compared to the Seaport District, which again, you're just going to find very recognizable names of stores and restaurants. Just based on some of these notes that I'm talking about in Beacon Hill, it definitely has a different demographic. I think it leans a little bit towards an older family, or even sort of maybe empty nesters or retirees, people that had lived in Boston at one point, moved out to the suburbs, raised a family, and now it's time to maybe move back in. And it's just got that charm and character. It's also a little quieter. Sometimes refer to the Seaport District as like a mini Vegas because it's bright and it's light and there's people all over the place, whether it's people that live there or people from out of town. Whereas Beacon Hill is going to get a lot of tourists, but it's just a quieter version of that neighborhood. So if you're looking for any more real estate information about Beacon Hill, Back Bay, South Boston, or any other neighborhood in Boston, please just reach out. I have so much information to share. It doesn't all fit in these little videos. But to cover the Seaport District specifically, let's talk a little bit about real estate. So the median price point for November 2024 was $1.9 million. There were only 11 homes sold that month in November, and that's kind of been the average over the past 2 years. And the problem with that is you could get a very high penthouse sale, and you could get a very low first floor, second floor sale, and these are going to dramatically change that median home price level. So you really need to start looking at the different buildings that you want to live in, what the different amenities are, and then we can sort of figure out which part of the building you want to live in, because there's pretty specific differences among the buildings in the Seaport District. So if you're thinking about buying or renting in the Seaport District of Boston, please give me a call. As I was saying before, there's so many different areas and different buildings with different amenities. You really just can't get that information when you're just looking at an online space. You really want to get in and walk through the city and see where your comfort level is. And that is the reason you would give me a call, because I could really show you the differences between even 1 or 2 streets. I hope this video was helpful for you. Subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you in the next video.